Alright, welcome back everyone. Today we're going to model a simple tree. Let's take a look. So these are the low poly trees we'll be making today. They're pretty simple but quite fun looking. We'll be covering how to make the tree trunk, the foliage, how to make it kind of interesting, as well as using Maya's deformer tools to help reshape our tree. Let's jump in. Okay, so let's begin. Go up to your poly modeling shelf and add a cylinder into the scene. We're going to use this to make the tree trunk. Press T on the keyboard to bring up this cylinder window, and I'm going to change the subdivision axis to 6. That'll give me a nice low poly look. And what I want to do next is I'm going to press W to bring up my move tool. I want to bring the pivot to the bottom of my cylinder, so I'm going to hold down D, then V, drag this arrow down, let go, then hold down X and bring this back up. So I'm dragging that arrow up and now it's sitting on the origin. Perfect. And now let's extrude those top faces to have our tree grow up. So go into face mode. So I'm going to hold down the right mouse button. This is how I prefer to get into Maya's marking menu. I'm going to go into the face component mode. I'm going to box select everything here. So the side and the top. Then what I'm going to do is hold down Shift, do another box select, and this will unselect those side faces, and now I just have these top faces. All right, that's one way to select them. And what I'm going to do next is extrude up. So I'm holding down the Shift key, and I'm going to extrude up, but before that I want to give it a bit of a taper. So I'm just pressing R to go into the scale tool, scaling that in just a little bit, and then I'm pressing W again to go into my move tool, hold down Shift, and then extruding up. There we go. And then I'm just creating some sections here where the tree is growing up. It just sounds so funny, growing up, but the tree is growing upwards. And pressing W again to go into the move tool, holding down Shift, extruding, R to go into scale again, right? And then W to go into move, hold down Shift and extrude. All right. And then the last part, I'll just bring it up a little bit higher and I'll scale that in a bit as well. Right, so now we have our tree trunk, but it looks more like a street post than a tree trunk. So we will need to deform this a little bit. So I'm gonna hold down the right mouse button. I'm gonna go into object mode, select my mesh. And then up here on the deform tab, open that up. And we're going to go to this soft modification tool. I'm gonna open up this option box. Just going to reset this, and I'm going to turn on preserve history. This allows us to save those modification tool handles. So click soft modification, and now we have this. And if you hold down B and the left mouse button and drag, you get a bit of a fall off. And wherever you click on this, it'll add a modification handle, and we'll be able to modify it. So let's do that. Click anywhere in your mesh. Adjust your fall off the way you want, and you can adjust your mesh, right? And what we want to do is just keep orbiting around our mesh and move some of these handles a little bit. If I open up the outliner, you can see that it's adding modification handles, right? So I'll click on another point. I can move it, right? And now it has a more of an organic form. It's not so rigid. Right, add as many as you like. When you're done, just click Q. I'm going to add one more. Just move this a little bit, maybe. Actually, I just want to decrease the fall off a bit on this one and then move it. Okay, I think that's good. I'm going to go into object mode. Sorry, I'm going to select my mesh. And then what I want to do is we have the option now to either delete the history to get rid of those soft modification handles, or we can select them, right? And it'll highlight, and we can still move them. So adjust it some more. I'm going to turn on wireframe unshaded, right? So you can see. And sometimes what I like to do is just grab some of these, just pull them down a little bit to change the angle of that edge loop. Makes it a little bit interesting. And another thing you can do if you want to select the modification handles from here, it's really hard to just select them. But what I do is I box select the mesh and the handle, then I unselect the mesh, right? That gives me the handle and I can adjust it and move it some more if I like. All right, I think that looks pretty good. Let's select our mesh and delete that history. And now let's create some foliage. So it's pretty tempting to do some simple foliage, and I'll show you what that looks like. We can use this polyplatonic object, so the platonic solid. Open up the attribute editor, just gonna move it up. Scale it up a bit as well. And we can go into this polyplatonic 1 tab and change the subdivision mode to triangles. Go up to mesh display, harden these edges. And we pretty much have this low poly look already. So this ball, and we can scale it and make it a little bit, well, maybe not like that, but maybe something like this. But I'm gonna do it a little bit different. So let's move this off to the side for now. We'll reuse it later. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a cube into the scene. So clicking this, and I'm gonna bring this up to here. I'm going to scale this up, maybe scale it down a bit. And what I'm going to do is select this top face, pressing W to go into my move tool, extruding this up, so I'm holding down shift. Then I'm gonna scale this in a little bit, just to give it a bit of a point. And then I'm gonna do the same for the bottom, extrude that down, and scale that in. All right, so now we have this kind of shape. Let's go into object mode, select our mesh, and what I wanna do is smooth this out. So give it some subdivisions. So I'm opening up the modeling toolkit. We have the smooth button, and I'm going to click that once. And we get this. I'm gonna give it a little more, a few more subdivisions. So I'm gonna turn this to 2. That's what I want. I'm just gonna scale it down a bit as well. And maybe bring it up. There we go. So now we have this shape. Now the next thing I want to do is displace these vertices. So select the mesh. I'm going to also maybe for now delete the history and freeze these transformations. And I'm going to go up to here where it says edit mesh. There's this transform option. Open up that option box. And by default, it's at the randomness is 0. This is sort of like the intensity at which it'll randomize. Just gonna move this up to about 5 or 0.5, I should say, and click transform vertex. All right, now what we want to do is look for this blue handle. Just pull this out, and you can see that it's displaced those vertices for us. So let's take a look. Go into object mode, select our mesh. We'll turn off wireframe on shaded. And you can see it's already starting to look very interesting, a little bit foliage-like, right? So the next steps that we'll be doing is reducing this into triangles. But before that, let's select our mesh. I'm gonna close this window. And this part may seem a little bit complex at first, but eventually it's second nature, right? It'll become second nature. So first we'll remesh it. So open up this option box. It's just gonna delete this history. I keep saying delete history at this part, but reset it. And we're going to remesh it. There we go. Then select the mesh again. What I want to do next is retopologize it. So mesh, open up the retopology window here. And I'm just going to reset this. And what I want to do is give it a face count that will capture this form. I'm going to choose about 3,000. 1,000 probably work, but I'm just gonna be safe. Choose 3,000 and click retopologize. Great. Now it has an edge flow that better matches this form. So now what we wanna do is triangulate, harden these edges, and then reduce. So let's do that. Select the mesh, delete the history. We're gonna go to mesh, triangulate, then mesh display, harden edge. We'll delete the history one more time and go mesh, reduce. And now what I like to do is just drag the slider all the way to 100 and then slowly drag back. I'm gonna hold down Control and drag back until I get a look that I like. It's just a bit faster. Let's take a look. I think that looks pretty interesting. Maybe I'll reduce the geometry just a bit more. And there we go. So let's take a look. Looks pretty good. I'm not crazy about this point here. It's not too bad. I'm just going to move it. Just up upwards a little bit. There we go. Maybe in a little bit as well. And now we have a nice looking low poly tree. We can just adjust the size of this if we want. So something that matches the branch here a little more. And I think that looks pretty good. And then let's just duplicate this tree trunk. So I'm just gonna Control D to duplicate, move it aside, and see what we can do with this, right? So using that displaced vertex, we can make this look pretty interesting as well. So I'm gonna select this, move it over here, move it up a little bit and scale it up. And I'm also going to delete that history, freeze those transformations. And now let's select this, go up to Edit Mesh and go Transform. You can choose the strength that you like. I'm just gonna keep it where it was at and click this. And then I'm going to look for this blue arrow and just pull this out. And with this one here, I find being a bit daring creates quite an interesting shape. So I'm gonna pull out by quite a bit to something maybe like this or even a bit more. And then what I wanna do is go back into object mode, select this and scale it back down. Now let's take a look. And I think that looks pretty good. I think for this one, I'll even give it a bit of a rotation, right? Just to change that a bit. There we go. I think that looks pretty good. Let's take a look. I have a couple of materials I made from earlier. Let's assign it to this. So make a material if you like, but for this, I'm just going to just give this Foliage 1. This one I'll give Foliage 2. These are just Lamberts, by the way, nothing special. And these ones I'll just give my tree trunk. All right, so you can see in not much time at all, we have, just gonna move these over a bit. I guess I can just turn off the grid for now. We have some low poly trees that look pretty good in my opinion and should fit well in some of your projects and games. Alright, I hope you enjoyed today's tutorial on making simple low poly trees for your game. I do want to cover other types of trees as well, and they'll be going over different techniques, so by the end of it, you'll be able to make a variety of trees. So look for those videos. This has been Digital Dreambox, your destination for game art.